All right. Hey, folks. Welcome to the March 12th SIG Windows community meeting. This is a recorded meeting which will be uploaded to YouTube. So please adhere to the CNCF code of conduct, which basically translates to be nice and kind to everyone. So without further ado, let's go on. Any announcements today, folks? Mark, James?
No, I just that KubeCon EU is coming up. If anybody's going to be there, please sign up for the contributor summit as well if that's still open. It's a good time to meet people and hear about other aspects of the what's going on in the community. And it's just a good time to meet all the maintainers.
Yeah, and I still have to figure out how to get my name off of the SIG Windows. What is that?
I think that there's a CNCF Slack, and you can message somebody in there.
Okay, the CNCF Slack. Okay,
There's
I
there, there
will.
there's usually like a KubeCon speakers or conference speakers channel, and you can either post in there or somebody is pretty clearly a moderator there. I
Okay,
forget. I'll try and look up the name after this.
all right, sounds good. I will try and figure that out. Um, let's give some time for any new contributors. I don't see anybody who is new, so we can just get started with the agenda. The only agenda item that is something I added is I remember seeing emails from, I think their handle is Ben the Elder, about migrating CI jobs to community infra. I'm not sure what that implies. I I don't have access to the Google group. Otherwise, if someone has access to the Google group, we could maybe share that email for the rest of the folks here. I and I also, as part of one of the PRs I was working on, I got feedback about us running stuff on Azure. I got the feeling they want us to move off of Azure onto something else.
I think there's been some discussions with James and myself too. The I don't think that the issue is they want us to move off of Azure. My understanding of this is they want us to move away from the way that we're launching jobs on Azure and how we're managing the secrets. Um,
Okay.
so today there's a the jobs run as under the jobs run on the Prow cluster, and a couple of things happen. One is that most of the Windows jobs, they go and they actually build, depending on if it's a CI job or not, they build the Windows bits on in the container that runs as part of the Prow job. And then they use the tools that we have in SIG Windows tools or Windows testing and the CapZ repositories to provision a cluster in Azure using a service principal and a secret that gets injected into the pod. And my understanding is they're okay with running things on Azure, but they would like more control over, I don't know if they would necessarily want more control over the subscription, but they don't like having to maintain a service principal in the in the cluster because of the way secrets are handled in Prow, and they're trying to make it so there's multiple instances of Prow that can target different community clusters. And so I think we're gonna need to figure out what to do to resolve that. Is that kind of the sense of that, James?
Yeah, and so I when this came up on your PR, I started a thread Slack with Ben to just identify what are the things we could do. So he gave a really detailed answer there. And then I've also reconnected with the people who own the subscription that we own or that we're using currently, to reignite some of those conversations. And so we'll see what comes of that. One of the other things that we can do here is potentially with some of the work that folks are working on with Minikube and some of the SIG Windows dev tools is it would be nice to have CI, and this is a thing that SIG testing is trying to do, and the reason they built Kind was they wanted anybody to be able to run the end-to-end tests and test Kubernetes without needing a cloud service, like a cloud service or cloud provider of any sorts. And so one thing we could do is figure out a way using the tools that are kind of being built now to have CI running on top of something like Minikube or some other thing. It doesn't have to be Minikube, but so that way anybody could pull these down and not have to have an Azure sub or have a Google sub or whatever to be able to run, or AWS sub to run these things. And then that makes it easier for new contributors to come along. And so that's something that we can look into as a SIG longer term. But I would think it would be built on top of some of the tools that folks are working on right now.
Yeah, that makes sense, James. I also haven't heard anything from Matthias or Amim about what happened with the SIG Windows DevTools work they were doing. I'm, in fact, stuck at the moment, given that I no longer work at Red Hat, that I don't have a place to test out Windows stuff because I don't have an Azure account anymore, or I don't have the money to spend on Azure anymore. So that is definitely it's going to affect a lot of people. It has been affecting a lot of people, and it'll continue to do so. So I agree with you that if we could get to a stage where even the CI is using whatever is being done in Windows DevTools, that's going to be the best case scenario for us. I think the difficulty in this is bringing up VM in the GitHub CI or something. There was some issues with that, because it would mean you need an image from somewhere. And I just vaguely remember somebody saying that was an issue. Maybe it was around the Minikube testing. I'm not sure.
Yep, that is the biggest problem we probably have. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to also say, like, this issue is not specific to Windows. It's specific to how we test things on Azure. So there's a lot of things like CapZ and cloud provider Azure and just Kubernetes on Azure itself that Azure needs to, like, we need to solve too. So it's probably like that issue with the way that we schedule things on Azure and how we use Azure resources. So it's not just a Windows issue too. So it's like a little bit bigger of a problem. So there's more motivation to fix the way that we're sharing like those credentials to Azure and the way the subscription's managed too. So I think we have like there's a couple different options for Windows. One is to fix work with the testing infrastructure team to better manage the subscription and stuff. And the other way is to potentially do like the kind type thing and do it more on just like whatever machines or whatever the tests, the product jobs get to. So.
That's actually good to hear, Mark, that it's not just the Windows only issue, that anything that, any CapZ cluster API testing that's happening has the same problem, because then we can sort of piggyback on them. Because I as much as I want us to go to using a kind cluster or whatever methodology SIG Windows DevTools happens, knowing the history, I don't know how quickly that'll happen. I don't know if it's going to happen by August 1st, for example, which is, I guess, some deadline that I saw in that email from Ben the Elder. So I feel we should at least fix it so that we could get it running in the end-to-end tests in Azure and have it at least solved that way, so that as far as rest of the community goes, CapZ and everything is fine. And then for Windows, we need to figure this out. Like, okay, we should figure out a way. I mean, this has been a problem since day one, right? Like, how do you get up a local environment for doing dev testing?
Yep.
In fact, my plan is to go and add an end-to-end test that I can kick off from each PR for testing the node log viewer stuff, at least in the short term, because I don't have an easy way to test the Windows stuff without doing that. So I'll at least do that. But I know that in general, the next feature I work on, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to, work on a new feature with testing in CI.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say I'll just add it to the meeting notes, like short-term piggyback on what Azure is doing, on what CAPC and Cluster API folks do to solve testing on Azure.
Yeah, and this itself isn't a new issue. There's an old issue that's either in test infrastructure or Kubernetes named literally donate Azure subscription to CNCF that was opened definitely, I think 2019, maybe 2020. But I think that's kind of a little bit more attention and everything now. So we don't have an answer, but there's a lot of motivation to fix this right now.
Yeah, so that's where I don't fully understand, Mark. So if the account is donated to CNCF, will this problem go away? Or because I feel like even if the account is donated, they just don't like the way where the service principal, etc., is being managed, or is it because they don't own the service principal that is bothering them?
I think it's that they don't own the service principal and they can't rotate it if they need to, and they can't generate new ones today, is my understanding. Is that
I see. And who does it belong to today? Does it belong to Microsoft?
Yeah, we have a PM Lockie Evanson who is kind of managing that right now.
I see. Okay.
And
Yeah.
he's involved in the community too.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact details. I know Minikube uses it and things like that. And so there has to be some way to transfer it into SIG testing's control. And so I think it's alluded to in that conversation there that there's people talking about this and figuring out how it works.
Yeah, because if that's going to satisfy them, just giving it to them, if that's possible from Microsoft side, would make it easier. But who knows? I don't know anything about it. I'm going to leave that to you and Mark and James to figure out. All right, looks like we have nothing else, no further. It looks like we have a plan in place to tackle this. And there's nothing else on the agenda. Does anybody else have any other topics to talk about? Avinash, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, hi, I'm Avinash. I'm kind of new here. I had a topic to discuss and wanted to know what the group thinks about. So I work with Windows Container in my organization, and recently we started using topology-aware routing. And that's when we realized that Windows Proxier does not have that. So I recently logged an issue for that, but I was kind of curious, what does the group think about it? And I'm also willing to contribute, but I'm not aware of if there were any historical reasons why we did not use it when it was introduced, like HNS or any other VFP or something that prevented it. So what does the group think about topology-aware routing inside Win kernel Proxier?
Hey, Avinash, welcome to SIG Windows. Thank you for opening up the issue. Could you just add a link to the issue in the chat, and I can add it to the agenda, and maybe open it up here so that everybody can look at the issue that you opened?
Yep, I should.
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any reason this wouldn't necessarily work. It was probably just the lack of maintainers being able to add all the various different features. And so, yeah, if you want to dive in there, we can also ping a couple of the other Windows networking folks who don't necessarily join this meeting, but we can just get their opinion quickly as well, to make sure there's nothing technically blocking this. But I think if you have a sense of how to get started and want to dive in, you can, and I'll be around and chat, and we can see if we can get some other folks involved as well.
Yeah, sure. I also have a thread in a SIG Windows Slack, and I think Dan from networking dimensions, like it's possible. There's some additional event handling that needs to be done. So yeah, it would be like interesting if this could be done. Like this solves a big problem for us, and I'm also like excited if I can find an implementation for that.
Cool. What's the motivation for you to support this?
So we have multiple zones, and we don't want our requests, like latency is the biggest issue, and like we have some of the Windows container services talking to Linux services that may be in local zone, but sometimes because this is not there, so there is a cost to time. We want to expand like services, and this is preventing us because there is no guarantee requests will route to the local endpoints.
Got it.
All right, looks like we have a way forward here. Avinash, continue the conversation and pull in James if it's needed. And I think James can get the networking folks who are Windows aware to help you on this.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, sounds good. I don't see anything else. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to talk about today?
Oh, I think that's
Okay, all right. Then I will give everybody 9 minutes back.
all right. Thanks all.
All right, see you all on Slack, folks.
All right, see you.